Representative Michael McCaul of Texas has long been one of these visionary leaders. As founder and co-chair of the Childhood Cancer Caucus, he has championed landmark legislation and strengthened the national government's commitment to ending pediatric cancer, such as the Michaela-Nalon Give Kids a Chance Act, which just passed the House unanimously on Monday to accelerate pediatric cancer treatments and expand access to life-saving therapies for children battling childhood cancer and other rare diseases. Today, we call on the Senate to take up this legislation quickly and send it to the President for his signature. Clearly, Representative McCaul's extraordinary leadership has changed what is possible for pediatric cancer research and for the families who depend on scientific progress to save the lives of their children. We are so honored to feature him in this inaugural AACR Pediatric Cancer Report, and it is now my great pleasure to welcome Representative McCaul to the podium to offer his remarks.
Thanks for having me.
Means a lot.
It means a lot to me, too. Well, thank you for that introduction, and it's great to be here today with good news. We get bad news on children who have died from this horrible disease, but this week we passed unanimously the childhood cancer bill, the Michaela-Nalon Give Kids a Chance Act, unanimously on the floor, and we hope for your advocacy here in the Senate. I'll be talking to Mark Wayne Mullen, who's a sponsor of the legislation on the Senate side. But if I can kind of take you back, how did I get here? I've been here for 22 years. Some people would say that's too long. I chaired the Homeland Security Committee. I chaired the Foreign Affairs Committee. But chairing the Childhood Cancer Caucus was really a highlight for me. 20 years ago, I had a lot of parents of children who either survived or died from this horrid disease. And I remember my best friend in fourth grade came down with leukemia. And I noticed his hair was falling out. And the next thing I knew, I was at his funeral. And I really didn't understand what happened. At 12 years old, you don't understand why your best friends died. And that really stuck with me for my lifetime. And so when the parents and the advocates came to me, I said, I want to make a difference. And what I've tried to do is protect vulnerables, whether it be the people of Ukraine and the children being abducted in Ukraine from the Russians, to any aggression in the world against, it's good versus evil, and evil here is cancer. I love MD Anderson's quote of making cancer history, and that's our goal. My wife serves on the board at MD Anderson, was responsible. It was really her idea 15 years ago why do we have to have competition between Texas Children's and MD Anderson on childhood cancer treatment? Why can't we collaborate these two great institutions together? And proud to say that's what we've done. Now, in the case of Michaela, I have an annual childhood cancer summit. And, after 16 years, I can always tell when one of the kids is not looking really very good. And I talked to her mother, and I said, I just see that look in her eye. Michaela, she's a beautiful child, but there's something, I can tell that she's not feeling well. And we got her in a clinical trial at MD Anderson and Texas Children's, but unfortunately 3 weeks later, she was on a ventilator and she passed away. And so we put the bill in her honor. So part of her legacy, I sent a video to her on her deathbed stating that, thank you for coming to Washington, and that it was not for naught, that, you will have a legacy here. and it's going to be this bill that will pass in your name. And that was really a cool thing to do, but it was really sad to lose her. And we've seen so many that have not made it, but we've also, as the years have gone by, over 16 years, seen a lot more who have survived. And unlike, my childhood when my best friend died from leukemia, it was a death sentence. Today, it's not. There are certain forms of leukemia that still are, but many that are not a death sentence today. And we made a lot of progress over the years. At that time, 16 years ago, the pharmaceutical companies and community, they really didn't care about the kids because there was no market incentive. They cared about adults because there was a market incentive. And, that's the way, capitalism runs. So Nancy Goodman and I collaborated on a new idea. Let's create a market incentive for pharmaceutical companies to start focusing on pediatric oncology. They called it rare orphan diseases at that time, which I thought was really insulting. I mean, a rare orphan. And to call these children rare orphans was terrible. So we did away with that terminology. And now it's about saving these children. And the Creating Hope Act that we reauthorized on the House floor this week has been made a huge difference in creating that market incentive. We've had over 60 vouchers approved, and we've had about 40 new pediatric therapies now approved by the FDA since the Creating Hope Act was first authorized into law. It expired. As you know, the government shut down. We got delayed, but we did pass a reauthorization this week. And for me, one of the coolest cases coming out of the Creating Hope Act was in my own backyard at MD Anderson, where Dr. Allison, working on CAR T immunotherapy on a childhood clinical trial, was able to get FDA approval by using the voucher system that we authorize into law. CAR T immunotherapy has gone a long ways in the treatment of cancer, not only for children, but for adults as well. And now the new thing are the natural killer cells. MD Anderson has a clinical trial. Tracy Ryan, who always speaks at our conference, has been doing a clinical trial down in Cancun because of the way, the FDA works. It's sometimes easier to get the clinical trial evidence in a different country and then present it in the United States. She just told me yesterday she's going to open up the clinical trial now in the United States, and the NK cell therapy is doing extremely well in terms of, therapies on the horizon for our children. In addition to the Creating Hope Act being reauthorized, we also changed the law when it comes to multiple drug therapies. So in adults, it's okay to give them multiple drug therapies, but in children, they were treated differently. And that's my experience with this whole journey, over 20 years. Well, they treat the children different from the adults. Well, in this case, we say, no, we're going to treat the children, we're going to give them the same opportunities that adults have in terms of multi-drug therapies. And so, that passed into law. And there have been so many great victories we've had over the years. But what I was really proud of McCaul and her bill, and I wish I had the posters of her so you could see it. We'll send all of you a clip from the floor speech, but her parents were there, and I gave them a tour of the Capitol after. But what I love the most about it is in this extremely partisan time that we live in right now, it was the most bipartisan bill in this Congress with 313 co-sponsors. And I'm proud of that. And it doesn't come easy, and we worked it. The best story, and I had this book I wrote called Better Angels, because these children are my army of angels. And what we decided to do, instead of like me going to a member's office, much more effective to have the children, my advocates, my angels, my army of angels advocate for the bill. Because, a member can tell me, sorry, Congressman, no, I don't want to sign up for that. But you bring in a child that either survived cancer or is currently suffering with cancer. And boy, and we have one, it looks like here in the front row, it's really hard to say no. And we found, wow, this is so effective. And it's a really cool Washington story that doesn't get out there much. But to mobilize an army of advocates of these, I call them my angels, my children, that go office to office getting co-sponsors, that's how we got 313 co-sponsors. I take really very little credit for that. I think it's, being the author, I think helped, but I think these advocates of children out there, I called Nancy, I said, what's going on, man? We had like 150 co-sponsors and now we got 313. Like, what is going on right now? Well, we unleashed our army of advocates on the Hill. Now, how cool is that? And it does make a difference. And people think, oh, I can't make a difference in Washington. You can. And that is evidence of it. And the children are our most powerful advocates on the Hill. We've also, since that time, the Race for Children Act, which was basically this innovation in using adult treatments to be studied for use in children. 40% of all new cancer drugs are studied now in children as well. The STAR Act was boosted funding for research, which was huge. What I think is really interesting in the AI world today was we passed this database, basically a data center where we could have a national database of samples of childhood cancers, specimens. So now we have like a bank, if you will, of all this research and specimens in this database of cancers that are out there in one database. And now with AI, if you can apply AI to that information that we have, as you know, AI is a power engine to provide solutions that may take a decade of study to provide that can be done in a matter of days. And so that is the next step, working with NCI to get AI to work on this database that we have to then provide more therapies, more solutions to childhood cancer. And then the Global Hope Initiative, little Sadie was my advocate for many years. I remember taking her to the White House bill signing ceremony. She was great. I would go on television with her, like on CNN with Wolf Blitzer, and she was like a star, just a natural. She was more nervous, or I was more nervous than she was, going on national TV, and just stunning to watch her in action. But she went with me to Africa, where we have the Global Hope Initiative. Texas Children's now is in Botswana, where the mortality rate is 90% because they don't have the cures and the therapies over there. And through the Global Hope Initiative, we're changing that number because most of these cancers are very treatable. They just don't have the expertise to do so. And after we passed that bill, and Sadie and I went over to Botswana together and met with the king of Botswana, but seeing all these African children who had a death sentence on their marked for death, to see them now living because of this initiative. There's nothing more powerful for a member of Congress than to pass legislation that then saves the lives of children. And I've done a lot of my career in terms of Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs Committee, but I still, I think one of the most rewarding things I've done up here is to pass legislation that saves the lives of children. And that's what we're doing. and that's what y'all are doing. And I appreciate all of you for your support and advocacy. Let's get this passed through the Senate, get it signed into law before Christmas. I can't think of a better Christmas gift to our children than having this bill on the president's desk. And so thanks for having me. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for your advocacy. And God bless all of you, and Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you so much.